With me.
Hello and welcome to another episode of This Marina Life from MDL Marinas with me, the marine podcaster, Kerry Hereford-Jones. For this episode, I'm talking to some more of MDL's tenants who I'm sure will provide you with some inspiration and ideas on the future of eco-friendly boating, particularly innovations and best practice for a greener future. First up is Alasdair James Marshall from SE Yachts, based at MDL's Hamble Point Marina. SE Yachts have three main strands to their business: e-propulsion, Arkona sailing yachts and Candela, all of which Alasdair provides a fascinating insight into and the direction of travel they're going in. I started by asking him to give me an overview of some of the background to the three businesses his company represents.
We have three major streams to our offering. From the very small, we sell e-propulsion outboard engines out from our office, and a really successful little unit, which is just a straight replacement for a petrol outboard on somebody's tender. We sell a good number of those to our yacht and powerboat owners, but also just to people who come into the office and want to buy one. So all the way from there up to the Candela, which is really at the forefront of technology, which I'll talk about in a sec. But the middle part of that is we sell our Arkona sailing yachts, and we've now delivered 4 electric drives in the Arkona sailing yacht, from 385s through to 435s and 465s. So a real big size range of yacht. And we're really learning through every single boat that we sell how to understand the technology, how to help people use it, and to actually really embrace using electric drives and the advantages to them. So it's a real lifestyle choice, and those that go for it really, really love what they've gone for.
You're really loving that partnership you've obviously got with those 4 boat owners. They're enjoying being at the cutting edge, but equally so you must be enjoying the real-time feedback you're getting from them.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's great. I actually did a sailing trip with some of the guys down to Jersey. We sailed down a 435 with purely electric, and with the regeneration element of the propellers, we turned up fully powered up 100% in the charging box, and we actually had to anchor overnight. So with some 75 kilowatts of batteries on board, I felt I could turn all the lights on and play all the music and everything like that. So it was a lot of fun and really interesting. And the real moment, I think, for me in my own personal learning of the technology was on the way home, when we ran out of wind completely at about 1 or 2 in the morning, and was able to turn on the electric drives completely silent and put a bit of wind into the sails, and we just ghosted along until the breeze kicked in about 4 or 5 in the morning. And it was a wonderful moment. Stars was out, the moon was shining, all of that. So it was really interesting, really good fun.
Wow. And that is what it's all about at the end of the day, is clean, efficient use of energy. When you need it, it's there, but it's all about enjoying the moment. And I think we have to remind ourselves that's at the heart of this. It's all great and really good, eco-friendly, all the rest of it, but you've got to keep the enjoyment going, haven't you?
Yes, absolutely. And I would argue that electric drives in sailing yachts, at least, there's a skill behind it, because the diesel engine has been used for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, and we understand how it works and also how it fails. And it's a very efficient tool to get us from A to B if there's no wind and we're wanting to power our yachts. And you have less of that overall time to be able to use, because you can't just have the engines on for, the electric motors on for hour after hour after hour. So you have to be a good sailor. So there's a skill-based element to this. And I think that's something to really promote, which is that as you learn in your progression, that you can progress to having an electric motor.
You mentioned there earlier Candela. There's a lot going on in that world at the moment, particularly this relationship with Polestar and Goodwood. Talk to me more about that.
Yes, so the new generation of Candela is putting Polestar batteries into the boat, which is increasing the capacity from 44 to 76 kilowatts, which means that the boat can go from a sort of 40, 50 mile range to sort of 50, 60 mile range. And that's a real step up for the capacity and minimizing range anxiety, which is, of course, a big thing in theory, but actually in practice, most people use well within the usage of what's supplied on the boats. The other thing the Polestar brings to the party is the sort of traditional, if you've got an electric car, you'll be used to that socket that plugs in. And that's what you can get from your Acura Superstars and a range of offerings where they've got more places you can plug in. So you can also use a Polestar battery with those plugs, and that will reduce charging time, say from the 20 to 80% capacity range down to about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, something like that. So it's really high power charging. So on our boat with a 3-phase charger, that's 3.5 hours, which is a PYD battery boat. And if you were just to plug in sort of using single phase on your pontoon overnight, that's sort of 12 or 13 hours. So you can see how the progressions are really making the boat for much more real world usage all the time.
And this is now emerging into the commercial sector as well. Stockholm, you've got the bigger ferry there now, really operating properly, commercially, fee earning.
It is, yeah. So I think when we last talked, this was something that was happening in the future, but now it's actually, you can go over to Stockholm and go on a ferry, 30-seater P12 Candela ferry, and pay your dues and hydrofoil from one location to the next in the Stockholm archipelago. So
Wow.
Sounds pretty cool.
Wow, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing, Alasdair. So let's talk a little bit more now about how boat owners can actually make their vessels more environmentally friendly. You've mentioned there already earlier on about your e-propulsion units. What's your advice? What are you talking to people about at the moment at the boat shows, for example?
If somebody comes to us and talks to us about electric, then we will certainly embrace that conversation. There's a technical element to it. So often the people who are interested are into the world anyway. And if somebody's looking at getting more involved, then there's lots of things to necessarily think about, because the way that you will use your boat will be different if you've got an electric powered boat behind you. And if you're sort of heading in that direction, then say, for example, you've got a smaller boat, then you can literally just look at a sort of change of taking out the normal sort of diesel or petrol motor and putting in an electric version. And there's more and more capacity and powered sizes being available on the market all the time. We've worked quite closely with e-propulsion and Ocean Volt, but there's many different offerings and they're all pushing each other and getting better and better. So there's, in a way, it's you've got to jump in at some point with the understanding that the technology is going to keep moving. But I think those that do really enjoy what they do and they love the fact that they're really kind of pushing the boundaries. But you've got to think quite carefully, especially, say, for example, you're buying one of our Arconas, which is, not a cheap boat. Then you've really got to think carefully about your usage and how you're going to use it, what sort of systems you're going to have and the capacity you need. Are you going to have a generator? Are you thinking about hybrid propulsion with that? So there's a lot of different elements to it. But if you are getting into that, then you'll really enjoy those conversations. It's part of the fun, really. And then obviously going out into real world situations, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. And you can feel very much on the forefront of the technology and in the way that it works for you. And sometimes, of course, it won't always work for you. And it's about what you do at that point as well.
That's the other thing, isn't it? Then you're sitting there with your pluses and minuses on that bit of paper, and you're looking at what you're going to use your boat for and how you can actually achieve many aims. The most important one is still, and it keeps coming back to, range anxiety. That's kind of in the gut, if you will, of any skipper. And that's something which seems to be lifting as batteries and technology improves. Would you agree with that?
Yes and no. I think I would definitely agree with it. Yes, the technology is improving and pushing that back. No, in the fact that if you can't get past that, the diesel engine is still a very, very strong option for a sailing yacht, at least, because you can run your engine for 36 hours and you can't do that on electric. You maybe more like 8, 10, 12 hours at more minimal speeds. So it's a different calculation. But we start with the Arcona with a very good sailing boat. That means that for the majority of the sailing that the time on the water that you're doing, you're sailing and can actually be recharging using the propeller technology to put the power back into your batteries so that when you're arriving and you need the power, you've got it. So that's why it's a different type of approach to the sailing world. If you're, say, there on a Sunday morning and you need to get back home at Sunday evening and you've got 12 or 14 hours of just engineering because you need to make that Monday morning meeting, having an electric boat could still be quite thought-provoking while, the old diesel just get you there. So you've got to think about what's going to work for you and what isn't. So it's still interesting conversations.
As in the car world, the big push all down the electric route, the targets are there by the government. But there's that whole issue and that whole challenge is that the driver seems to gravitate back now a little bit more towards the hybrid version. Is that something that you can see emerging more into the boating world?
We're kind of focusing on the sailing boat here rather than the Candela so much, but on the sailing boats, no. I'd say that actually those that want it are more likely to go full electric now and moving away from having a generator, because those that have find that they don't actually use it as much as maybe we would worry about, and to give them that capacity because they learn how to use the boat and when they can have it and when they can't. So they change their usage pattern to start fitting, and then they learn how to grow their usage pattern by understanding the technology better. So it's a different calculation. So I think in the sailing world, no. On the power world, and with, for us, that's the Candela, I think that obviously it's a purely electric experience. There are more hybrids that are kicking in on the front end, at least, where they're looking at combining a diesel powered efficient engine to give you high speed and great range, and then to be able to have your very quiet, very really nice driving quiet boat when you actually get there. So we don't do that in the Candela. We're just purely electric, and the joy of the quietness and the efficiency and all of those is very much what we focus on. But we have seen a few of these hybrid power boats starting to come back into the market.
Just as a sort of a comment from me, really, it is almost a mind shift for the boat user, the boat owner, as much as a physical environmental shift. It's actually a mindset that we need to reset ourselves in many ways to embrace this technology, to embrace what electric boats can offer.
Absolutely. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And so here's a nice little side one on that, which is when you do start to change that mindset, something else that tends to disappear off electric boats is not just the electric motor, but the gas as well. We're seeing more people using induction cookers, quite high powered units, but people obviously with a good chunk of batteries can operate with an induction cooker. And so that's quite interesting to see how people are going, well, actually, I don't need to have any gas on my boat at all. And that's a big safety issue that can just get forgotten about because you don't have any of it on the boat. Yeah, it's different. It's really changing all the time, and people are thinking about it in lots of different ways.
As we're reaching the end of today's podcast, Alasdair, what I really would like to try and get from you a little bit of a sense of how recycling is now actually built into the product, because we're very much conscious of how many old boats are kicking around out there. GRP doesn't degrade very well. It ends up in a landfill. So just talk me through the environment you work in. How much is recycling now built into the actual production of the boat in the first place?
It's a really good question. I would say at this stage, not as much as it needs to be. I would say that there is a nod to it, and certainly with the electric products, there's more thought going into it. We tend to be in quite a lovely situation that our boats are built really well, which means that they've got a very long lifespan. From the Arcona perspective, we've been building boats for 30, 40 years, and we're still selling 18, 20-year-old Arconas, and, people are enjoying them, and we'll still be looking to do lots of sailing on those boats. But I think if there was an area that needed more thought and more offerings from a commercial perspective in the retail sector, that's definitely one of them. So that's a really interesting question.
Because this is where we are in other worlds, isn't it? In other things, from the Hamble electric toothbrush, where recycling is now part of their mindset when they're building the thing. Or a little more challenging when it comes to a 40-foot sailing boat.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agreed.
Just a reminder that if people want more information, want to talk to you, obviously they can go onto the SE Yachts website, but also they can come and visit you, can't they?
Absolutely, yeah. Our office is at Hamble Marina, and we go to all of the major boat shows in the UK. So we'll be at the South Coast Boat Show and the Green Tech Show again in April, May. And of course at Southampton, Jersey and British Marine Show. There's such a good range of good shows in the UK. But yeah, we're based in the Hamble Marina, and just give us a call. Always happy to talk boating.
My second guest is Chris Gates from SeaTag. Chris is representing an area of the marine industry that really is at the cutting edge of the environmentally aware world we now live in. Boat upcycling. I began by first of all asking Chris what SeaTag actually stood for, both as a name and as a brand.
Well, SeaTag, it doesn't stand for anything, but when you're starting a new business off, it's always very difficult to try and name it. And we spent hours and hours and hours trying to name it, and because you want something that's quite unique, that stands out, so you can find your way in this digital world. So actually, it's Gates spelled backwards, and it's fitting for what we do. So people get a little bit confused with the spelling sometimes because it's SeaTag, but it's definitely caught on.
And remind us, if you will, Chris, where are you actually based?
We're based down in Plymouth at an MDL facility in QAB, but we travel all over Europe.
What is the main function of SeaTag? What is it you actually do?
Well, I'm sure we'll cover it during our discussions, but I ran Princess Yachts for 30 odd years and had a wonderful time building Princess up, creating some wonderful product over time. And through my character, I love detail, so I gained an awful lot of knowledge about how the boats are built and designed and how customers use them. And retired back in 2020, and unfortunately retired into COVID, so that stopped all the plans we had. But did a little bit of work for a friend of mine in the pre-owned market and realised that it's a bit of a zoo, and there was a gap in the market for putting together a collection of people that have got phenomenal knowledge about these boats and helping people take an older product and refurbishing it back to a new condition. So that's what we do. We're massive upcyclers in many ways. We started off specialising in Princess, Fairline and Sunseeker because that's the DNA of the people within the company. But we branched out as we've understood that those skills are transferable in a productive way to other brands. So we take a boat that's, it can be very old and bring it back to a new condition, both in looks and technology, or we can add that personal touch to something that's the newer end.
Today we're talking about innovations and best practices for a greener future, and that's really the heart of the discussion we're going to be having today. Let's just dig in a bit more detail now that you've given us the overview about SeaTag. Is you obviously emphasise sustainability, as you say, through refits rather than building new. How did that actual approach come about, and really what are the environmental benefits that you see with refits over new builds?
I'm a businessman in my early 60s and looked at building SeaTag up with a mind of value for money. That's been the core backbone of all my business activity through my career, is delivering value to money and quality to a customer. The sustainable side of it, where we're obviously not impacting the environment in the way that we construct them or a recycling product, was a byproduct, but I quickly understood, and I've seen such a movement driven by the younger generation in the way that they look at recycling. They look at recycling as the thing that should be done rather than someone that's doing it as a choice because they can't afford to do it with a new product. And I've realised that actually now is a core message and it's a core activity. It's transformed our business into one that looks at the sustainable benefits of doing it, because obviously building a product of such sophistication, whether that's a car or a house or a boat or a plane, anything that's got sophistication within it, no new builder is going to be able to have the footprint of energy consumption and material consumption in making something that's new compared to upcycling the product. We're light years ahead as far as our carbon footprint is concerned in delivering something that feels and smells and acts as if it's new, but it comes from basically upcycling an older product.
And the issue there particularly, of course, is that because of the marine environment that we're in, that actually it's very difficult to build sustainability in right at the beginning of the build of the product in the first place. Very easy to do with things like, I don't know, electric toothbrushes. You can build recyclability in right at the beginning, but that's the real nub of this, isn't it?
I've been involved in discussions over decades, to be honest with you, especially on the fiberglass side, in how do you recycle these boats, because the industry is still relatively 60, 70 years old, the fiberglass boat builders have grown, over that time, and thank goodness the UK has been a leading light in that. And I don't think people truly understood that the boats, if they're cared for, almost last indefinitely. So there's been many discussions on how we recycle fiberglass, and today there still isn't really a sensible economic way of doing that. And people have realised that the boats last forever. So you'll see them transported all around the world as different markets look for different value in product. But the older boats, still the boats that Princess originally made are still there. When you look at the more sophisticated recycling, and you look at the complexity of whether it be a sailing boat or a power boat, the number of suppliers that are involved, many of which are tiny, the marine industry as a whole, so you look at cars today and they're built with the recycling mentality. You look at the ability to do that within the marine world, and it's a real tall mountain because you've got so many small suppliers that are all over the world. We can do things in the new build world in a more environmentally friendly way, but that comes about the energy consumption in building the product. But I think to build it for recycling is light years away.
You talked earlier on, and you made a really good point, I think, about the customer being at the heart of any business like yours. What are the real advantages to those customers that you have about refitting then, about going for a more eco-friendly refitted yacht versus buying brand new?
There's numerous advantages. I think that the big thing that we're all about today, and it's something that's taken over all of our lives, is personalisation. And the easiest way to look at that is you look at social media. Social media very cleverly targets you as an individual with what you're interested in. So that's at one end of person. So everything we want to do in life today is all about personalisation. So if you buy a new car today, there's endless choices to try and make you feel as if you're buying something that's unique to yourself. And in truth, when you get to a product like that, you're very cleverly taken through a pre-described number of options that give you the feeling that you're getting personal. With what we do, we absolutely create something unique for you. We've got a gentleman I was talking to yesterday, he's asking us to help find a used product. We'll help him find that. We'll take the burden away from the survey, engage surveyors that we know and trust. Then we'll sit down with him and try to understand what he wants to achieve. What is he trying to create? What does he like? We'll then investigate what tastes of materials he likes, what does he want to do as far as propulsion, and we'll put a package of work together with him that creates something that's truly unique. And because we're dealing with one-offs, what we tend to do is teach the client that putting some luxury in isn't overly expensive. Because if you're doing a one-off sofa and you do it in material that's £80 a metre, or you do it in material that's £150 a metre, the actual impact isn't huge, but it can make a huge difference to the way that your boat feels. The boats that we've refitted tend to be much more luxurious than they were when they were in their production life, mainly because we're doing things as a one-off. So you get that personal attention to detail, you get exactly what you're looking for. There is minimal impact because the big elements, the hull, the decks, the running gear, 99 times out of 100, the engine room, the engines themselves are all fine. They need some maintenance, they need some love and attention, but fundamentally they're fine. So your environmental impact is tiny. The amount of money you're investing to have a new product is a relatively small proportion, and yet you get that new boat look and feel.
I can see a lot of ticks in the boxes there for the environmental incentives and encouragements. What about the financial incentives for boat owners to consider a C-Tag refit as opposed to buying new?
New boat prices have escalated quite significantly over the COVID period. Demand went very high, material availability and inflation it's been very significant. New boat pricing across the industry All elements of the industry has escalated quite significantly. Obviously, that's pulled up second-hand values, which makes everyone feel good.
Sure.
That's like the housing market. It does make us all feel good.
True.
But you can invest a proportion, and when I say a proportion, we've done projects that are £5,000-10,000, and we've done projects that are £1.5, 1.8, £2 million. But if you look at your core donor boat and then add on the refit costs, then you're into average is probably less than half the money you'd invest in buying new.
Let's take a little bit of a glimpse into the future, shall we? Shall we jump into our DeLorean time machine and get up to 88 miles an hour? And have a look at the future then for both SeaTag and for the world that you inhabit and the world that you're working in. What are the emerging trends do you see there in terms of the technologies, and what are you planning to incorporate into the future projects that you might be having?
The big luxury that's coming in boating is silent running. So people are very interested in the environmental impact. They're interested in how they can run silently, especially at night time. They're interested in sustainable materials when they're refitting. So we've got some lovely carpets, for instance, that are made from recycled marine plastic. You'd never think so. They feel like silk. They're absolutely beautiful. But they're actually made from recycled plastic, and people are interested in that environmental impact. So one, we can deliver that quality look and feel with environmentally friendly products through an upcycling format. But the technology that people are looking for, they're looking for reliability, they're looking for latest technology as far as things like nav are concerned, and protecting their investment over time as they look into the future. But I think the trend that people are looking for generally is quiet running, really quiet running. So they want that noise level to be really reduced. So we do a lot of sound insulation increases, and we've looked at looking at propulsion systems that are silent.
So you've got some great partnerships, I'd imagine, working together out there. There's a huge, of course, now electronic and electrical drive now, as you say, in the industry as a whole. So these partnerships you're working with there, pretty significant to your business, I would think.
If you look at the pedigree of the people in SeaTag, you'll see that there's a lot of people that have been in serious roles in the industry, in different marine businesses in the UK, but at a very significant, at a high level for a long period of time. So our experience and our relationship with the supply base of the industry is probably second to none. It's really enjoyable working with the different people, suppliers and partners through the industry that we've known for decades in helping bring this new way of thinking to our marketplace. If you're in the mega yacht world, it's normal practice and it's been there for a long time, and people look at it as a real opportunity because it gives you value in speed. It's not normal in UK boating, and we want to bring it there for environmental reasons. We see a big opportunity to build. If you think about UK marinas and in the NDL world, we've got a stock of boats in the UK now that's unfortunately got quite a big impact from the Brexit decision. So we've got a trapped stock. You move boats in and out of the UK, you've got to consider the VAT implications. My view of that is that over time now, the UK, its core stock, it is not going to have as much new product within it. Therefore, we've got to take care of the product that we've got. So I do see upcycling and recycling as a society becoming more normalised. But I think it will be accelerated in the marine world because you've got the massive cost of changing your boat if you go down the new line. Plus you've got the impact of the VAT charge if you're going to buy a boat from Europe and bring it back into the UK. So therefore you'll be looking at the stock within the UK to upcycle. And we want to normalise that way of thinking because it will allow then people to think in a slightly different way.
What can the boating community therefore do itself, do you think, to support your kind of style of eco-friendly refits? What are the ways that boat owners can get involved in promoting sustainability with SeaTag?
It's like everything, it's just spreading the word, it's getting things normalised. When you refit a boat, they are complex, and if you try to do it yourself, it is difficult because you're involved in so many trades, so many disciplines, so much knowledge, that there aren't businesses like ours that really have grown up in the industry with such a broad educational base. So it's just spreading the word, it's getting that, we call it the third way. If you're a boater, you can buy a new boat and enjoy the privileges of that, and that's fantastic, we need that to happen. You can buy a pre-owned boat, but when you buy a pre-owned boat, and you've probably been there yourself, you go through that purchasing process with your surveyor, and then basically you're cut loose, you're on your own. And I think we've slightly lost perspective that when you're spending a serious amount of money on a boat, you know, everyone talks in millions and billions these days. They've lost perspective that £100,000 is a lot of money. Or you can do what we call the third way. So you can look at buying that boat in the pre-owned market, working with us, having it surveyed, designing what you want with our design team, and then we will take that product and deliver it back to you looking and feeling like new, with all the mechanical side and electronic side and all the plumbing side addressed.
Chris, it's fascinating to talk to you. As I said, we could probably do another hour on this. But in conclusion, if people want to know more about some of the things we've talked about today, what's the best way of getting hold of you and having that chat?
The easiest way, as things are these days, is just go onto Google, go onto the website, seatagyachts.com, just Google SeaTag, and then you'll see our story, you'll see lots of projects that we've done, which are quite inspirational in their own right. You'll be able to read a little bit about the pedigree of the team, and there's a contact form on there and all our contact details and addresses there, and then we'll get back to you normally within 24 hours.
As always, a huge thank you to all my guests for giving up their time. I hope you found what they had to say both inspiring and informative. For more information on those featured in this episode, just follow the links on the show notes, and do look out for these companies appearing at the MDL South Coast and Green Tech Boat Show taking place on the 9th to the 11th of May 2025. Don't forget to go to the MDL website, where you can find the full services directory. Please do let me know your own thoughts on some of the areas we've talked about today, and I hope you'll join me again soon for This Marina Life with MDL, the perfect berth for you and your boat.